All right, everyone. We start off today talking about RFK Jr. Now, as far as him as a candidate within the Democratic primaries, RFK Jr. is a minor problem for Joe Biden. I see all the hype. Oh, he's a real problem. Biden wishes he would shut up. I'm sure that he would. He'd rather run unopposed. And hippie grandma, of course, on her own doesn't even crack 10 points. So, Marianne Williamson is basically meaningless. Believe it or not, foreign policy shouldn't be sending gifts of organite to foreign states. I realize that, Marianne Williamson probably believes that and, some holistic aromatherapy sets will heal the world, Yoko Ono style, but I think the average American disagrees with that basic summation. But RFK Jr., I mean, he's well within the double-digit range in some polls, so he does have a pulse, technically, although you don't really have enough people in the field to be a threat to Joe Biden. Biden will be renominated unless he decides not to run. All indicators point to him already running, and I mean, he's the incumbent. He doesn't really have to make a formal announcement, so to speak. They changed the order of the primaries for a reason. But if RFK Jr. does what he appears to be leaning towards doing, which is saying, fuck the Democratic Party, I'm going to throw them under the bus, make my pitch to the people, hey, the Democrats no longer stand for the values that they did 20 or 30 years ago. They're pro-censorship now, they're pro-medical compulsion, honk honk, I won't say anymore on a video that I upload to YouTube now. They're sending all sorts of money overseas and blah, blah, blah. And he runs as an independent, that would be a big fucking problem for the Democratic Party. Despite all of the hype that we hear from the liberals who are afraid of RFK Jr. and don't want anyone opposing Biden, that's why they're doing this. They're trying to astroturf in the voters' minds that actually RFK Jr.'s support mainly comes from Trump fans. That is not the case. Trump has a very hardened core fan base, and he's rising swiftly in the primaries again. He's now arguably in the low 60s, although it takes time for the aggregate to catch up. He's definitely well over 55 at this point and rising. He has the support of the GOP and will be their nominee. You may get some TDS sufferers that jump ship, but it wouldn't matter if there's any third-party candidates because, like as not, they protest vote for Biden or they stay home. Much as there are disaffected Democrats that don't really want to back Joe Biden, many of them think he's too old. I don't. I think it's not the age, it's the level of cognitive incoherence, so another reason not to back him. Some are not taken in by his foreign policy, and some are just like, hey, the economy's fucked, and I'm a Democrat, but I don't support this particular Democrat. RFK Jr. is a lifelong Democrat from a lifelong Democratic dynastic family named Kennedy, could cause a big problem. In a race in which Trump arguably leads narrowly in national polling, and he leads by a bit more when you figure in Cornel West already. He doesn't really have a pulse, but he's the Green Party nominee. He'll be the one fronting them. I think that Cornel West alone draining a single point out of the Democratic corpus among elements of the far left is enough to tilt the election in Trump's favor already. This is why I give Trump an advantage, especially if they're nuts enough to jail him, or put a gag order on him, as I explained the other day. But RFK Jr., I think, could get 3 or 4 points out of the Democrats. And it wouldn't come for, although the damage is blunted, admittedly, because a lot of them would be otherwise MAGA Union Dems. We saw this happen in the Rust Belt in 2016. They're the MAGA Democrats. People who tend to vote Democratic nonetheless cross the aisle. In 2020, very few of them stayed on the Trump train. Many of them stayed home. There was no one to vote for. A lot of them didn't vote for Biden, but they also didn't vote for Trump again. If they vote for a third-party candidate and don't get reabsorbed by the Democratic Party, that certainly puts Michigan into play. It puts Pennsylvania into play. It impacts Wisconsin. The disproportionate effect would be in that part of the country. Possibly also in other areas with strong manufacturing sectors, the military sector in Virginia, for example. Virginia is going to be close, especially if Youngkin very visibly decides to stump for Trump, which remains to be seen. He might do that in-state and have like an unofficial proxy endorsement sort of thing going on. As an independent, RFK Jr. does a huge amount of potential damage to the Democratic Party. And the funny part is that if that happens, we're not sure that that's what he's going to talk about. He's teasing it out as we speak. We're not sure he's going to run as an independent, but if he does, then it'll be funny because the old line of, well, most of his supporters are actually Trump supporters because he's a medical disinfo peddler. That argument will kind of evaporate when it's actually Biden in the national polling that suffers a slump, I think. And that's what I would suspect would happen. I think it'd be about a 2-for-1. There would be some people, anti-Trump Republicans, who would say, well, he's a Kennedy. You know, some boomers get nostalgia for the family name. That's certainly not even just possible, it's certain. I think it would be more union Dems and certain neoliberal Democrats who are simply like, well, Biden's not going to win. They've gotten black-pilled, actually, which is why they've got a black-pilling campaign about Trump being unable to win, despite literally every bit of evidence you could possibly analyze at the moment. They're trying to do that because they're worried about Biden fans being demoralized. Biden has lost double digits of support since he was selected for his stewardship. He was riding high at first because people were coming off the high of, oh my God, finally Orange Man is gone. No more mean tweets and stupid shit like that. My J6. That's already worn off a long time ago. Arguably 6 months to a year ago, it started to wane. The propaganda's not having as much of an impact anymore. And all you really need is an independent who has a relatively large amount of money to spend. He's Kennedy, he has that. Name recognition, he's certainly got that. And has an appeal to certain blocks of voters. It's a limited number. The Union Dems are no longer a particular power within the Democratic Party like they were 10 years ago. A lot of the Unionists now are far left, so they're not going to vote for RFK Jr., and the Union Dem membership has in general stagnated anyway. But it's still enough tens of millions of voters in total that could potentially be impacted to sink Biden's chances of re-election. That's why I'm hoping that he does run as an independent. Maybe he'll be the no-labeler candidate. It might not be Joe Manchin, although, I mean, you could do worse. Joe Manchin should look into that for his own political survival, I suppose. Maybe he can hawk shit on a Legacy Media Network. He can sell ceramic pots or non-stick copper cups or something like that, because he's clearly not going to get reelected. RFK Jr., though, I think would fare better than Manchin overall. And you could see a perfect storm where both of them are independent running. Um, you would have the Gypsy Moth running, and then you would have the dynastic Union Dem running, while Cornel West is also running. Again, the Green Party having a name recognition candidate for the first time in a generation, all at the same time, and really parasitizing probably a low double-digit amount of support from the Democratic Party. Well, they'll get crushed. It won't trickle down ballot so much, but as far as the executive impact, I think it would actually be quite sheer. That's about all. Peace out.